years ago, and some of you may recall, and it was called A Letter at Easter, and it started off with Dear Sir. I don't know if you remember, but last night I decided I didn't like it, so I rewrote it. This is the sonnet. Now, do you all know what a sonnet is?
I don't.
Yeah.
All right, let me tell you, because a sonnet is the most precise poetry that can be written. The rules are very specific about what makes a sonnet a sonnet. Number one, it has 14 lines. Always 14 lines. Number two, it is separated into two parts. The first part is 8 lines. The second part is 6 lines. Typically, the 8 lines sort of set up what the 6 lines solve or talk about, finish for you. The most famous sonnet ever written probably was Elizabeth Barrett Browning's How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways. Okay, that's the sonnet. Now, Shakespeare wrote a whole bunch of them.
And the meter for the sonnet.
And the meter is very specific. It is iambic pentameter, which most of Shakespeare is anyway. But iambic pentameter, that means iambic is da-da, 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 da-da. Pentameter means 5 beats, not da-da, 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 but da-da, 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 da-da. Every line, 5 beats, iambic. The rhyme scheme is very precise. The rhyme scheme is A-B-B-A, A-B-B-A. That's the first 8, which means the first line, the 4th line, the 5th line, and the 8th line rhyme. It means the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th rhyme. Okay? The last 6 lines can be very different, but they're typically one of 3. C-D-E, C-D-E, which means the first, 4th, 2nd, and 5th. Okay? Or C-D-C-D-C-D, or C-D-C-D-E-E, which this is. Which means the 1st and 3rd lines rhyme, the 2nd and 4th lines rhyme, and the 5th and 6th lines rhyme. Okay. Perchance this life we live has always been but doomed to cease when dust reclaimed its own. And we retire to nothingness alone, when death its final victory will win. Then all would be in vain. So why begin some useless project never to be known beyond the smallest circles, ne'er full-blown because there's naught but misery within? Rejoice, my friends, the truth is not so odd. We shall have life beyond our dying breath. For there was one amongst us, born of God, who died and rose again to conquer death. He paid the price that we alone could not, eternal life. Consider what he bought. All right, cowboy poetry. I don't know how many of you are interested in cowboy poetry, but it is a genre that is becoming more popular all the time. There are huge cowboy poetry readings all over the country, and Heber City has one every year that brings all of the great poets and also music and so on. Let me just tell you about this particular poem. I ran into a friend of mine. His name is Jeff Butler. I don't know if some of my family might know Jeff.
I know Jeff.
And Jeff is a cowboy. He was a rodeo rider. He worked for Western Airlines as an attendant, and so when he wasn't flying, he was riding rodeos. That was Jeff's life. About a month ago, I ran into Jeff. Now, I had already accepted the assignment to read in this evening of cowboy poetry. So this just happened this way. I ran into Jeff, and we started talking. I said, Jeff, what are you doing these days? And he told me. And immediately popped into my head, there is a cowboy poem. And I looked around for a writer of cowboy poetry, and I couldn't find one, so I wrote it myself. And this is it. I knew this old cowboy. I've known him for years. I remember when he was a kid. I watched him grow up, and I say, through my tears, that he shouldn't have done what he did. At least at the time, I sure felt it was so. because I knew all the great things he'd done, and I swear that he knew what he needed to know, what with buckles and prizes he'd won. I'd best start at the top and recount the whole tale. A cowboy he was, had that touch. But he didn't herd cattle out there on the trail with its roping and branding and such. No, his skills was in rodeoing, don't you see? He competed right well against the best. But the solo events was what made him feel free, and he hadn't no truck with the rest. Just give him a bronc that's a stomping and kicking, and watch him just raking them flanks, and you'll notice them Levi's like glue still a-sticking, that bronc still right there between his shanks. And them old Brahma bulls fared no better than the hoss. They was bigger and meaner, that's all. And for 8 little old seconds he showed 'em who's boss as he sauntered on back to the stall. Now, I ain't saying he never got throwed, no sirree. I saw him get tossed once or twice, and he made far more money than that entry fee, and watching him's well worth the price. He had a real style, almost a swagger, them cowgirl types worshipped, you know. He loved this high living, and I ain't no bragger. He'll get where he plumb wants to go. But then he was gone. He weren't out there riding. I wondered if something was wrong. If he maybe was sick or gone into hiding. Felt like a sad cowboy song. Well, it happened one day as I was out walking. I see him a-coming my way. He looked fit as could be, so I just started talking. He stopped. I had plenty to say. I asked him how come he quit riding the circuit. Them rodeos just wasn't the same, and I'd been to a lot of them when I could work it. Them programs had left off his name. Reason, he told me, was all about time. What time did the folks passing by? Said he reckoned that he was a bit past his prime. I knew that he meant it. And why? Because he told me he'd quit. He'd had about enough. He couldn't go on going solo. That rodeo stuff was just getting too rough, so he switched. Can you believe it? To polo. That's what Jeff does now. Okay, go eat.